Welcome to Phalafel, the most mentally stimulating and thought-provoking podcast in the entire world.
I'm Shrutik.
I'm Lohith. And this is Phalafel. As you can see, we got this beautiful set, this beautiful design. We're two idiot high schoolers. We really have nothing going for ourselves. Close to zero.
Close to zero.
But we're doing our best here to learn about life. We're going to find out the meaning of life. That's the entire goal of this podcast. And we're going to actually get back to you with the answer. So, if you decide for some reason that, you're going to leave and not listen to us anymore, you actually won't find out the answer to the meaning of life.
And isn't that what we always just strive for? Like, isn't that the whole,
exactly.
purpose of living?
And that's our whole purpose too. We're going to work with you guys and we're going to find out the meaning of life, man. We really hope you guys enjoy. We worked pretty hard on this podcast.
All right. So that was a very emotional, tear-jerking intro.
Right.
But I think, today I want all of you at home, sitting at home, looking at me in the eyes. And I want you to care. I want you to look into my eyes. Do you see these, adorable
eye bags?
Adorable, pleading, gorgeous,
right,
succulent eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just look into my eyes and you just can't help but, fall in love. And
I can't. That
That is why I'm the sex appeal of the show.
Right.
But, let me get back to the main point. So I want you to care about philosophy. I'm gonna be real. I never was into philosophy. I would spend my Saturday nights, actually having a life instead of this guy who would read Plato, Aristotle, more Greek names, Greek authors on weekends. And then I had like a mental evolution. I leveled up, if you will.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I realized that philosophy actually has like a lot of impacts on our life and why it can be valuable to us. So that's pretty much what we're going to be exploring today. Just to be blunt, why philosophy is important, why you should care, even though, you're probably someone who, actually has a life. So, yeah.
But yeah, so philosophy is a very broad term. It can be whatever you define it as, right? But often, a lot of people, they think about their lives, and that to me is still philosophy. Just, what am I doing here? What is the meaning of this whole thing, right? Now, a lot of people don't come to any reasonable conclusions, but they have a lot of they appeal to some sort of direction, right? Okay, maybe I need to focus more on the process than the goal. There's certain principles that you'll start to live by just from your own experience. But what if you went to the library and you read all these books about people who have thought their entire lives about why life is meaningful, right? You can read one book of this guy who wrote his entire life story. Let's say it's Marcus Aurelius's book on Stoicism, right? He wrote down all of his philosophy on life just from thinking and his life experiences. You could digest that in probably less than 2 hours. And that to me is a beautiful thing. You can literally just keep digesting all these philosophies and become better, or be more confused and just live in the absurdity of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the beautiful thing, we all have our own thought process, our own approaches to life, and understanding philosophy and why people make the decisions that they do is, imperative to, becoming a stronger, more wholesome person.
Yeah. Now we're under no illusion, we're not no intellectuals, okay? But we at the end of the day, we do this to appeal to women. And, philosophy is a great way to do that.
Because, dark, tall, mysterious.
Right. Stoicism.
Yeah, nothing is darker than whatever goes on in
our heads. Yeah. Look, any reason you get into philosophy is a beautiful reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no matter the motive, the end goal is amazing.
Mm-hmm. So let me tell you a story about my life, because, my life is just entertaining. It's probably going to be 90% of the reason that, you tune into this podcast, because,
Right.
You want to hear about me being a clown when I was younger. I was actually a sophomore, okay? It was October, and it was a very cold winter night. Or not winter, I guess fall, because it's October, right? And on this night, I saw a group of hooligans performing illegal activities.
You hit him?
No, I did not hit them because I am a coward.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of hitting, though, they were hitting a very unfortunate, device that I cannot explicitly say. But I'm sure you all know what I'm alluding to, you know?
Some sort of illegal substance.
Yeah, like there's wildfires, but, the smoke was coming from somewhere else. You know what I'm saying?
It's not good. Not good.
Not good at all, So naturally, I joined them. Now, I will not elicit what activities went down during that time period. I will say I have been drug-free my entire life. However,
except for love.
Yeah, the only love I need is drugs. I mean, the only drug I need is love. Yo.
That's actually a bar, bro.
Yo, I didn't mean it like that. I've been drug free my whole life, But they were my friends, so I had to walk down, dap them up. How are you doing on this wonderful October afternoon?
Yeah.
Right. And I actually spoke to him. I said, why do you do this? Right. Because I was curious, because to me, I've never been the type of person to judge people for using drugs, right? But I never personally saw the point of it, because why would you spend money on like a habit that isn't really like benefiting you? That's the way I saw. I saw like, drug use, especially in high school, as just like a waste of money and, potentially burning up your lungs, and like for what, like a temporary high. Like to me, it was just illogical. You know what I'm saying? So when I had this discussion with them, it kind of opened my eyes to the first time I had like a perspective that was outside of my own. That sounds very spoiled. Like, oh, he lives in a bubble, like whatever. You know what? Yeah, I admit it. I did live in a bubble, and I do live in a bubble, even to this day. Philosophy allows you to recognize when you're living in that bubble, and when, your mindset and your attitudes towards things aren't necessarily beneficial to your own mental health and your own mental like attitude towards the occurrences of life.
Yeah, you can you understand that your perception is very limited, and that there's so much out there that you can't comprehend, right?
Yeah.
And like, I want to talk about something, Shrutik. Just to be 100% transparent to the audience. We're recording this after the entire first season, right?
Yeah.
And after our last episode, Shrutik got very mad at me and basically left the podcast. Now, for me to handle that, I had no idea what was going on, right? I'm not that kind of person to, be very sympathetic and nurturing. It's hard for me. So in that moment, I knew I had to look to something greater, which to me has always just been philosophy. I knew that I couldn't let my ego get in the way, and I had to really try and compromise and be a better person. Now, every time me and Shrutik get in a disagreement, we just talk about certain things we've talked about on this podcast before, which is just, being happy, working hard, all these things. We always relate to these things, even if we have our disagreements, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think, to expand on that, talking about philosophy is, one thing, but actually applying it in your life is another. Something that, a popular example is like someone who says, oh, I want to live my life in a certain way. And because I want to live my life in that certain way, I'm going to perform certain actions. And they only do that stuff for like about a week and a half. And then they end up stopping, right? Now, everyone has this idealized version of themselves that they want to be. For example, like someone who I want to be is like, oh, I want to be the type of person who has their life, so together that I wake up at 7 a.m. every single morning, go on my morning run, have my coffee, bagel, whatever, get all my work done before 5 p.m. and just chill, right? Like someone who has their life very put together, very organized, stuff like that, right? That's the type of person I aspire to be. Now, in reality, what I do is I'm waking up around, 9, 10 a.m. Obviously, that's not bad, but it's not 7. Instead of, working, getting all my work finished at 5 p.m., I'm up until 11 or 12, still doing a little bit of work because, I haven't organized that properly. And understanding that there's different philosophies that work for each person, understanding you have to adapt to your own personal, your own personal needs and desires is also something that we heavily explore on this podcast. And I think that's just like another way that philosophy is very important for our personal digestion.
the thing we really want to take away from anything we study is how to apply it to us, our specific situations. So hopefully you guys can take some sort of nugget of wisdom from that. Um, Often if you look into the entirety of what people have thought about life and what it means, it can get really confusing because a lot of them contradict each other. For example, like these hedonists will say, just take drugs. They'll say certain things like, drugs are all I need for love, right? Or someone who's he believes in more meaningful pleasure, such as, accomplishing something. Those two technically, in a way, contradict each other, right? Now, not one of them is objectively the only way to go, but there's arguments you can make for yourself to go in a certain way. At the end of the day, it's important, at least for me, to look into certain philosophies, take away some things, but to not be like, okay, I'm only going to follow this stoicism and that's all I'm ever going to do, right? Because you're in a different situation than those philosophers were, and you have a different outlook on life.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I want all of you to at home to fully understand that philosophy is literally for everyone. It's for you, it's for me, it's for your cat, it's for your dog, it's for your ex-girlfriend who left you for their best friend. I'm not bitter or anything.
But all right, I want to ask you something, Shrutik.
Yes.
Let's say you do study a lot of philosophy, and it gets pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty the dawn of reality hits you, and you just realize you're nothing. Is that something that everyone should be doing? Can ignorance just be bliss sometimes?
In a way, sure. I think the biggest thing to understand is like you can't overthink yourself to death. Essentially, not maybe not literally death, but
you can, a lot of philosophers have been depressed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you can essentially give up on life, right? A lot of the people who have those like fake deep conversations with themselves always end up at the conclusion of, oh, life is meaningless and I have no point of continuing. When in reality, I feel like that's the most common takeaway. Like I feel like everyone's came to that conclusion like at least once in their life whenever they like tried to be introspective. That's like baby's first philosophy, if that makes sense. I think the biggest thing to understand is like coming to terms with your own personal responsibility to yourself, as well as what you perceive your responsibility to be to the rest of the world.
Yeah,
is what philosophy is truly about. So yeah, it can be hard to digest, but like the thing is like you got to be high IQ enough to just like not fall into that, beginner's trap.
Maybe it's not a beginner's trap. Maybe it's just the ultimate reality. Or maybe it's just some sort of phase, or maybe it's just a beginner's trap. Yeah. Like nihilism, what you're talking about, just nothing matters. Maybe it's just true though, right? But there's certain ways you can go out of that. Subjectively to yourself, you can kind of argue why things matter to you, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think the only reason that we should even, perceive philosophy as a useful skill, outside of, the stuff that we mentioned earlier, is because it forces you to view things from a certain perspective that allow you to draw more informed takeaways.
Right.
And then these informed takeaways actively shape your future as opposed to, your future actively shaping you.
Yeah, to me, philosophy, the biggest thing is just living by certain principles that you have thought about and really, put the effort to, come up with rational conclusions. So before you go outside, you'll be influenced by a lot of people. But I feel like if you're a more philosophical person, you'll have already had the answers to a lot of these questions that won't be able to influence you.
Mm-hmm.
So every morning you'll wake up with the same sort of principles and then go outside and try and enact those principles rather than, being influenced by other people's ideals. You'll be more strict if you think about what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
At least that's what I think for what works for me.
Another important component that I kind of want to touch on is just like maturity in general. I think that the more philosophically minded you are, the higher chance you'll have of, being able to view things in like a more mature light. So let me give you an example, right? When I was younger, I used to have like really bad temper issues. Like I'd throw fits whenever things wouldn't go my way.
Oh, when you're younger?
Hey man, look, growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, when I was younger, I'd throw fits when things didn't go my way. I constantly, oh, my favorite thing, I guarantee every kid's done this at least once, bro. Take your little backpack, stuffed animal, granola bars, 3 water bottles. I'm leaving the house and never come back.
You actually did that?
I did that so much.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm leaving the house and never coming back. I'd walk 2 houses down. My mom said, "Get your ass back here."
She was faster than you.
Yeah, man. And I was back at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Eating the same old food. But the point being is like, I had these issues for actually a really long time. Even like, and the only time when I realized that, I got to learn how to like pick my battles and pick the sort of arguments I engage myself in. Because also a lot of times what I do is I was also a very argumentative person. Like whenever I disliked something, I would instantly try to argue it. Like, oh, this isn't, the right way to go. And it would be over like silly things too. Like, why are you making me wear a jacket outside? It's not even cold. And my mom and I get into like a small argument that escalates, and then she's always like, "Oh, you don't ever do what I tell you to," which is true. Like I wouldn't, because I wouldn't think that what she did was right whatsoever. I had this like complex in myself, which was like, I'm a free thinker. I gotta be my own person.
Free will.
Yeah, free will. You know what I'm saying? But once you start understanding that each person has their own perspective, and that you need to understand people's intentions for what they truly are and not what you perceive them to be, that allows you to level up a lot. That allows you to see that argumentative behavior, although, in general, like being argumentative isn't necessarily a bad thing. But like when you argue over like little like pointless things, like how I used to, you essentially just doom yourself to a life of misery, because no one really wants to interact with someone who just, constantly like spits in their face all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have this theory of mind where you're able to, imagine yourself as someone else, and then live in their experience, and then try and empathize with whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say you don't believe in free will. You go into philosophy, you don't believe in free will. How are you going to treat people the same way, You're obviously going to look at everything differently. You're going to look at yourself differently. You're going to have more self-love, in my opinion, if you don't think you have free will. Let's say you have certain political philosophies. You're going to act differently. You're going to treat people differently. Let's say you're more utilitarian. You think, communism, more spread of wealth inequality, right? All these things. It's just going to, the fact that you get into these things early, I think it's extremely good for society. And it's almost never taught in schools, right? Just the ability to think critically, and the ability to just look at what other people have done already. The history of philosophy itself. At least we've never been taught that in school, and I think that would really help someone like me to evolve, get that real alpha male energy, which I've never found.
Exactly. And so I think and I want to expand more on the critical thinking idea, because I feel like a lot of people like high key lack that.
Like we do too.
Yeah, and I'm sure we do too. But the biggest thing is just I want you to talk about, okay, so I don't know if you ever argued with someone who refuses to listen. I've a very close friend of mine, and he does this thing where if you try to have a discussion with him, he turns it into an argument. And then he says, and this is my favorite quote, "I understand, but," he'll tell you you're right. And then in the next sentence, he says, "But here's why you're wrong."
Right.
And then you disprove his point, and then he restates the same point.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So critical thinking skills, something that he very clearly lacks. You know what I'm saying?
That can be taught through philosophy.
It can be taught through philosophy. Exactly.
If X equals Y, then Y equals X. Those sorts of things.
And it's also it teaches you humility as well. Like you're not always right. You're not always you always have room to grow. And that's also something that I think is very essential that philosophy teaches us all.
Yeah.
Like the thing is even though I'll admit I'm still not 100% perfect when it comes to managing my own emotions and stuff like that, right? If I have a very strong opinion about something, I I won't usually back down from it, but I don't think there's been a single time in extremely recent history where I've been extremely illogical about something. Like if I'm given like a set of facts and I'm presented to them in like a logical way, which is like, this is why you're wrong, then I'll be like, oh yeah, my bad. Like, and I think that's a skill that I only could have learned via philosophy, because if I was unable to recognize like things like humility, things like patience, things like learning to pick your battles, and things like allowing yourself to grow instead of, being caught up in your own ego and refusing to allow yourself to, undergo that growth, then I'd be in a much worse place overall.
Yeah, I truly I agree with you. I genuinely believe that the closer you get to like truth, the better of a person you'll be. The less of an ego you'll have. The closer you just get to the truth of the universe, I think that you'll just be better. Because you understand how small you really are, how much of an impact you can really have, and all these things. I think they actually just make you better.
Yeah.
You treat people with more love and kindness because you know that maybe that's all that there is that can help you as well. But yeah, I think that's the ultimate takeaway. The closer you get to truth, the more you look into philosophy, it's in your benefit as well as for others as well.
Mm-hmm. So I want to propose a very interesting thing. This is the first episode, but we're recording after the, pretty much all of season 1's done. So I'm going to ask you this question by the end of season 2, which means all of you at home, if you want to see, real live growth, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then you guys all got to tune in.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you right now, what do you think the meaning of life is?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
I was asking you.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
What
do you think? I'm gonna ask you this question after each season.
Okay. I think the meaning of life is that's a pretty tough question.
I know, but we got to answer it.
Maybe it's just to be happy, and if you can, make other people happy.
Mm-hmm. And what constitutes happiness?
Life fulfillment. It's just a feeling. So whatever brings you that.
Mm-hmm. What brings you happiness? Go ahead.
Well, puberty did.
What?
Okay, I'm happy when I accomplish something after hard work.
Yeah.
Like I swim and then I do well. I'm happy.
Yeah, just lots of physical activity. Right?
Yeah, lots
that pumps your serotonin.
Yeah.
You got the front stroke.
Yeah.
The back stroke.
Yeah. You got that stroke game's on point.
Yeah, the breaststroke.
Yeah. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
I think after you work hard
mm-hmm.
and you sort of do something, you feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely being with people, building relationships is important to me at least, because that just sort of makes you happy.
Exactly.
Doing nothing. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You just be friends with someone, you be happy. It's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, and that explains why you have so many people on your Snapchat, right?
I know.
No.
All right, thanks for listening to Falafel, guys. This is our first episode, but we hope you stick with us. We're gonna get a lot better as always.
Mm-hmm.
Next episode we'll be asking you what the meaning of life is. All right. But yeah, why don't you do the outro?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, shorter episode today for y'all. Hopefully, this was pretty easy for y'all to digest. You understand, why philosophy is important to all of us. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the very first episode of Falafel. We'll have much longer episodes, coming out after this, so you get to explore me and Lohith's dynamic, much better. And
we go into much more deeper philosophical topics rather than talking about your heartbreak or whatever this was, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was the first episode of Falafel. If you like us, then obviously, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep listening to us on Spotify, SoundCloud. And yeah, check out our Clips channel because, you can find everything there. We get tons of fan mail. So if you would like to contribute towards that fan mail, then our email is teamfalafel@gmail.com.
And we will get back to you.
We'll get back to you
We have
instantly.
absolutely nothing going on in our lives.
Exactly, bro. Yeah, all we do is we just read our fan mail.
Yeah, that's literally all we do.
Exactly, bro. Because the only drug I need is love, and I got it right this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, peep us on social media at Team Falafel on Instagram and Twitter. But yeah, that's it.
Listening, guys.
To quit chasing and look for something better, but the smile that she shows makes me a go-getter.